We are still looking at the types of sovereignty. We have external sovereignty. We said this means every state is equal in the gathering, short as UN, African Union. No state is bigger or more important than the others, as we established earlier on that all states are important despite of the size of the population of that country. Internal sovereignty refers to the supreme power of the state to make and enforce laws on the citizen within its territory. The legal sovereignty, another name for this, is parliamentary sovereignty. Some call it political sovereignty. This sovereign power vested on the electorate to form a government of their choice. And the exercise of these is through the ballot box by voting those candidates they want to delegate power to. So the citizens are those who are exercising what we call the legal sovereignty or political sovereignty, that they have the right to vote in or vote out a government. We also have the facto sovereignty. This sovereignty is acquired with the use of coercion. It is a forceful sovereignty, as normally being exercised by the military, what we call the military sovereignty. In order to ensure compliance or obedience, it has to resort to the use of force because it is an illegal sovereignty. These are people who come to power through the barrel of the gun. So that types of sovereignty is what we call the de facto sovereignty. We also have what we call the de jure sovereignty. These sovereignties are acquired in accordance with the laws of the land. It means a lawful sovereignty. And here the leaders don't have to use force or coercion in order to ensure compliance or obedience, because they come to power through the established laws of the lands, that is through the constitution. So that is another types of sovereignty, the jure sovereignty. So having looked at the types of sovereignty, external sovereignty, internal sovereignty, legal sovereignty, and de facto sovereignty, we also want to look at the limitation of sovereignty. When you look at Jane Borden, he had a very beautiful definition with regards to what sovereignty is. He says sovereignty is the absolute supreme powers of the state to exercise over its own citizens or within its own territory without not being subjected to outside influence or interference. But however, many political scientists said there are limitations to this particular concept of sovereignty. So let's look at the things that limit sovereignty. One, we have international laws. These laws, the sovereignty of states, these limit the sovereignty of states. States abide by the international law in order to maintain world peace. Because of this, it can also limit the sovereignty of the state, because if the state can claim it has absolute supreme powers without external influence or interference, most of these international laws can also limit the concept of sovereignty. You also have international treaties and agreements. The existence of international organizations as well, which many nations belong, has placed serious limitations to its sovereignty. Example, the African Union, the United Nations, the Mano River Union. Most of these countries has also put serious limitation to the existence of sovereignty. We've seen cases when these international organizations are even involving to the domestic politics of those countries. For instance, there was a situation when the United Nations almost referred to the government of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi as illegitimate government, and in fact he was forcefully removed by the UN. But the question you may ask yourself is, Libya, is the United Nations is the one that elected Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, or he was elected by the people? But you see there is an interference of the UN in Libya, because a country like Libya is a member to the United Nations. So because of these international organizations, they can also limit the concept of sovereignty. We see many cases. For instance, in Sierra Leone, there was a case of the former vice president Sam Sumana, and the Supreme Court of Sierra Leone ruled in favor of the government. Later, he challenged the issue to the ECOWAS Court of Human Rights Commission, and the ECOWAS Court ruled against the Sierra Leone government. The government at that time that was in power was argued that Sierra Leone is a sovereign state, and the Supreme Court is the highest court of the land. So whatever decision the court has made is final. So why should ECOWAS Court turn down that decision? But they failed to realize that Sierra Leone is a member to international organizations like the ECOWAS. So therefore, international organizations can also serve as limitations. We also have foreign aid. When a state is giving economic, military, and technical aid by other states, its sovereignty may be affected. Most of these foreign aid, for instance, talk about the IMF, the World Bank. These are international financial institutions, and mostly when they give aid or loan to African countries, you've always heard about the IMF conditionalities, the World Bank structural adjustment policies, and these are policies that are being imposed on smaller countries with weak economy in order to implement them. So that is also serving as a limitation to the concept of sovereignty, because sovereignty says the state has absolute supreme powers to exercise without not being subjected to outside influence or interference. Another limitation to the concept of sovereignty is the influence of powerful nations. Powerful nations like the USA, the USSR, Great Britain, etc. influence the policies and laws made by some states. These affect the international sovereignty of small states. These countries like United Nations, sometimes they even dictate to the domestic politics of those member countries, especially countries that are with of very small economy. So they can also limit the concept of sovereignty. Customs and traditions. When a state adopts a customs and traditions of some ethnic groups in the state, its external sovereignty may be affected. You have certain customs and traditions that even undermine the concept of sovereignty, when the state will say it has the legal supreme authority over its own citizens, and people will conduct certain activities which the state may not want to stop, because making an attempt to stop some of those practices will also jeopardize the security of the state. You also have supremacy of the constitution. No matter the body or institution in which sovereignty is located, the power is limited by the constitution of the state, as nobody is above the law. Of course, coup d'etat, forceful takeover of government through coups, limit the sovereignty of the state, because constitution is normally suspended. So in fact, when there is a military takeover, it serves as a limitation to the concept of sovereignty. When you have an outbreak of a war, a civil war, is a limitation to sovereignty. When there is a civil war, the government will not claim, the state will not claim that it has the absolute supreme power to exercise over its own citizens. Outbreak of disease, diplomatic immunity. You have people who are free from persecutions while they are performing certain jobs. We call them the foreign diplomats. All of these serves as limitations to the concept of sovereignty. So having looking at the limitations to the concept of sovereignty, we want to look at the features of sovereignty. The features of sovereignty as follows. 1. Unlimited power. The power or sovereignty as a state has no restrictions, because state issues orders which are binding to all citizens within a territory without any external influence. So in other words, the concept of sovereignty is not limited to few people, it's unlimited powers. So the state has the unlimited powers to bind decisions, to make decisions on everybody without being limited to few people. That is one feature of sovereignty. You also have permanency of sovereignty. Sovereignty is permanent as long as a state exists. Government changes, but sovereignty must not. We have change of government over the years, but the sovereignty remains. Then comprehensiveness. The power of sovereignty widens in scope. It is binding in all persons or groups within the territory. You also have absence of foreign control. The powers of a sovereign state are supreme within its territory without foreign control. That is why the concept of sovereignty say that the state has absolute supreme powers to exercise within its territory without not being influenced by foreign bodies or anybody else. So there is an absence